Welcome to Decades of Heistery, where we cover safecrackers and bank heists from 1926 up until U.S. involvement in World War II. Let's get some closure by doing follow-ups on the robber nicknamed Lone Wolf. We'll also check in on the Shelton Birger gang war in Illinois. We can schedule the Olney, Pennsylvania bank robbery murderers, their date with the electric chair, plus we'll follow up on the recent spate of North Dakota, Montana heists, that outburst of violence. We've got updates as well on the Phenix Trust Co robbery in Rhode Island. If you recall, Phenix is Phenix, and make a return to the Ferguson State Prison Farm for another prison break attempt. All that in December 1926, Decades of Heistery, Part 2. Our April 1926 Part 2 video introduced the Phenix Trust Company heist in Warwick, Rhode Island. Just over $26,000 was taken. Well, between that video, between April 1926 and the writing of this Daily Kennebec Journal December article, one John Gilbert Miller was arrested and imprisoned for the bank job. His sweetheart, Miss Elizabeth Kelso, only 23, was also under arrest for conspiracy to rob that bank. Kelso had been arrested on December 30th in a New York restaurant on Broadway, where she was waiting tables. Louis J. Jackmany, Assistant Attorney General of Rhode Island, believed that she had conspired in the heist. But when Kelso appeared before a magistrate, Corrigan, the magistrate was convinced otherwise. Kelso appeared, smiling, and Corrigan advised her that she was probably wanted more as a material witness, but recommended that she fight extradition from New York to Rhode Island. He noted that the arrest was, quote, a ridiculous performance, end quote. If you're one of the few who saw that video, you might recall a quartet comprised of first-generation Italians. I asked at the time if they were actually guilty of this robbery, since they'd been arrested for suspicion, or for any robbery, frankly, or were they taken in because they were Italian during a period of high prejudice against Italians. Hopefully yet more to come on the Phenix Trust Company bank heist. We visited the Ferguson State Prison Farm for the July 1926 Part 1 main story. It was a violent prison break perpetrated by three unarmed liberators. A trustee named or nicknamed Raider was instantly shot and killed as two cars rolled up on the prison yard. 6 specific convicts were called out for release by these dastardly liberators, and included George Dixon, Charles Pryor, Richard Naylor, C.R. Holland, Robert Bernard, and Alvin Ireland. Fast forward to December 4th, and the Brownsville Herald informs us that 7 convicts had escaped. Were any of the above, just named, recaptured between July and December and involved in this subsequent escape? It isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Apparently, 4 unnamed convicts either gave up or were captured, yet 3 were on the lam. 4 of the 7 were involved in an escape the week before. So this was not a foreign event for them, an anomaly. In fact, 1 of the 7 was on his 3rd prison break attempt. Somehow a barn containing 50 tons of hay and feed erupted in flames, probably attributed to the escapees in some form or fashion. More on this prison farm escape attempt as information avails itself. Sticking with the Brownsville Herald, we revisit the blistering Shelton Birger gang war, first noted here in the October Part 2 video. Recall that the gangs were partners in the bootlegging business, and had united against the Ku Klux Klan recently, but that the Shelton gang was branching out to include highway robbery and even bank heists. This, in part, led to the rift that exploded into machine gunning members and affiliates. Now we see Joe Adams, mayor of West City, Illinois, and noted to weigh 300 pounds, though I'm not sure what that has to do with the story, was gunned down while standing in his home's front doorway. It was another link in the chain that was the Shelton Birger relationship. This was the third attack on the mayor, but was not necessarily politically motivated. In fact, Adams was the former roadhouse owner and friend of the Shelton gang. Adams had even reported that Charles Birger had threatened his life in the recent past. So that story continues to smolder. We covered the Olney bank robbery that took place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the May 1926 Part 2 episode. In summary, the robbery involved a vehicle darting to a stop with men pouring out and firing at 60-year-old bank messenger William O. Miller, despite a police officer standing guard right by Miller. Police chased the robbers, whose vehicle had been disabled by gunfire and who'd absconded with, of all things, a milk wagon. During the pursuit, Officer Harry M. Cooper was shot and killed. 4 of the 5 would-be robbers were captured. Leaping forward from May 1926 to December 1926, we learned that Pennsylvania's first quadruple execution was set for January 31st at Rockview Penitentiary. Governor Pinchot, Pinchot, issued the death warrant for the crooks. Frank Doris, William Juliana, Joseph Curry, and Harry Bentley. We're still not sure who that 5th mystery robber was who got away, but hopefully he has had the good sense to quit crime and to go straight. This is as close a call as it gets. In September, we introduced a story about a new Rockford, North Dakota heist of between $50,000 and $60,000. The amount was shortly thereafter adjusted to $90,000, which made it a North Dakota record bank robbery at the time. We followed up in October with a snippet about a Norris Forrest, whose description was similar to that as given by an eyewitness. Norris had been having eye issues, and one of the robbers wore colored glasses, so it seemed like it was a lock that this Norris Forrest was involved. In fact, a $300 reward was put on Forrest's head, that is, the lone wolf's head, since he'd escaped jail twice and was known to be a solo bank robber. However, the lone wolf's photo was shown to a couple bank officials, and they were unable to identify Forrest as one of the robbers. And that's good because apparently there had been no escapes from the North Dakota State Penitentiary, quote, recently, end quote, according to Warden John Lee. It turned out that it was simply a rumor, thereby exonerating Norris Lone Wolf Forrest from the new Rockford, North Dakota heist. So more on North Dakota and Montana from a different angle. So as noted, we initially covered the new Rockford, North Dakota heist in September 1926, then followed up in October. In November 1926, we added the Wheelock, North Dakota job that had resulted in the killing of cashier H.N. Peterson on November the 12th. 1 week later, these bandits were at it again, this time hitting the Malta National Bank at Malta, Montana. Descriptions of the robbers were sent from North Dakota to Montana for the assistant cashier there, John Kilduff, to examine. Kilduff made a connection and was detailed in noting that the two he had encountered wore 3/4 length sheepskin coats. Warrants were issued for a Lester Barge, John Northrup, and Ray Moore, all 3 of them ex-convicts. We noted that $1,600 in rewards for the trio on a dead or alive status was available at the time. So back to Plentywood, Montana we go, where we learned that an unknown number of robbers held up the county treasurer's office, netting $85,000 in cash and bonds. County Treasurer Eugene Torstenson and Deputy Miss Anna Hovitt were forced into the vault as one of the robbers said, quote, "Be damned quick or you'll get what Wheelock got in North Dakota," end quote. In addition, descriptions of the robbers matched with the pair that robbed the Malta, Montana bank, as we just noted above. So these guys were on a tear. They were successful in piling up tons of cash, but seemingly reckless while doing it. After one title and 3 massive subtitles, you'd think that would have told it all, but alas no. The producer's news shows us the level of scrutiny and investigation going on in this county treasury department robbery. An attorney general, former state treasurer, acting on behalf of the insurance company that wrote the department's policy, plus the state bank examiner and his assistant were all in Plentywood, Montana. In addition, an attorney from the bonding house in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and several Burns private detectives were in town, the former having the entire town under surveillance. Burns, Alan J. Burns, was a famous detective and became leader of the Bureau of Investigation, which was the precursor to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI. More officers kept arriving over the next couple days, in fact. They reviewed that the robbers arrived on November 30th, the last day of the tax-paying period. Apparently, Torstenson and Hovet were locked in the vault for 1 hour until janitor Frank Dionne, D-I-O-N-N-E, released them. This is where the story goes from bank and treasury heists to a backstabby political gripe fest, and frankly it keeps getting weirder as it goes on. The numerous officials interviewed town's citizens and were inundated with a ton of hateful, hate-filled insinuations, clues, suggestions, and rumors that essentially were designed to denigrate the current county officers. Stranger still, area papers The Medicine Lake Wave and Daniels County Leader wrote up lurid tales about county officials being involved in the county treasury robbery. The Helena Independent added more rumors to the point that the Associated Press refused to even run their stories. That led the investigators to check and recheck the county treasurer's books to see if there was any truth in what the townspeople were saying. They investigated everyone's history, including the janitors. The sheriff and his staff were also investigated. Everyone was investigated. Was this an inside job? Meanwhile, a man named S.C. Nig Collins had been apprehended in Minot, North Dakota recently, and was being held in jail there. Attorney General Foote went to personally interview this S.C. Collins. Collins was a suspect since it was learned that a, quote, big Buick car had driven east of Minot, and that a mile or two outside of the village of Granville, quote, 2 men in sheepskin coats, one tall, one short, had been let out of the car and started walking back to Minot. Strange behavior, but the sheepskin coat is possibly a good clue. Well, a farmer noticed this exchange of people getting in and out of cars and going places. It struck him as odd, especially since there was a blizzard that had started blowing. Said farmer spotted the plate tag on the vehicle in the big Buick car and noted that it was from Montana. Stranger still, said farmer watched as the men made their way back to Minot, but then got picked up in a Ford which was headed back to Granville. Shortly thereafter, the marshal of Granville noted that 2 men matching their description, purchased tickets for a train ride. Care to guess where that train was headed? Yes, correct. Minot. That information, along with the license plate tag number, was phoned in to the chief of police back in Minot. And it turned out that the car belonged to a man in Joliet, Montana. Officials went and met the train when it arrived, but the sheepskin-clad fellers weren't on it. Meanwhile, County Attorney Erickson, Under Sheriff Robke, that's R-O-B-K-E, and Sheriff Spiker searched area hotels and garages, and wouldn't you know it, they found a Buick with a Montana license plate / tag. One S.C. Collins of Plentywood, Montana had left the car there. Collins was then located at the Leland Hotel, registered under his own name, and laying asleep in bed. And angered Collins answered Erickson's inquiry as to why he was there with, quote, "None of his damn business," end quote. This is when Collins ended up in the clink, or jail, in Minot, North Dakota. Enter the law firm of Sinkler and Brecky, representing one S.C. Collins, who'd asked for a writ of habeas corpus for being illegally held despite being a suspect in the Plentywood County Treasury heist. So who hired Sinkler to defend Collins? Well, it turned out it was some, quote, Plentywood friends, end quote. Perhaps these friends had just come into a large amount of money. Well, Collins claimed to have a basic alibi, though officers clearly believed he knew something, and that is how that bizarre tale ends in December 1926. We sought closure, but alas, I'm actually looking forward to January 1927, hoping to learn more of this unusual saga. In addition, we'll update any bank heists, related crimes from the stories, all the stories noted above, as information becomes available. That is a wrap for Part 2, December 1926, Decades of History. Next up will be our quick hitter video to introduce new, smaller bank heist stories from around the country. For now, I want to thank you for spending your time with Decades of History. Until next time.
Where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet, and so is she. Bye bye, blackbird.